today we are doing something completely new. We're doing Blasphemous, which is a Metroidvania, I think for 2019, that I've been tracking for a while because it features like very heavily religious themes that Castlevania also touched on and that Dracula games kind of always do. Patch 4.0, Wounds of Evertide, a new unlockable ending through completely new questline. Completely new area named Warning and Havoc is now accessible in Custodia. Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow, Echoes of Salt is increased in size, featuring more places to explore. 2 new challenging bosses now lurk in the depths of Custodia. New art, new background has been added to the main menu. Various elements of the existing levels have been tweaked. New animated scenes. New NPC can be found hidden in the library. The Keymaster guards their entrance. Okay, so there's clearly lots of secrets, which is one of the staples of the Metroidvania or Castlevania system. You're going to be playing this with a controller. It is not the sun rising, but our sins.
Because it is my guilt, I claim you, grievous miracle. Make my chest hurt with regret. Forge your punishment and nail it deep. Shape my guilt once again.
Okay, so this is speaking to the religious history of self-flagellation and martyrdom. So this idea of guilt is very prominent in early and modern Christianity and Catholic.
Repentance, mourning, and every pain of the soul of all kind were visibly and tangibly manifested everywhere and in all of us. Sometimes in the form of blessing and grace, sometime in the form of punishment and corruption.
Tree growing out of the mouth of someone. It's a Dark Souls 3.
Equally pious and cruel, which we could not and will never be able to unravel, was called the miracle.
It's kind of a Vlad the Impaler imagery, or Vlad Tepes, the inspiration for Dracula. So the giant spiked hat is indicative of the thorns of the cross that are put upon Jesus' head as he's crucified. Left bumper. Press left button to consume one of your biliary flasks. Biliary meaning bile, potentially? The biliary valve is a medical term. Let me just look it up really quick to make sure. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, biliary colic, biliary symptoms and disease and treatment refers to diseases affecting the bile ducts, gallbladder, and other structures involved in the production and transportation of bile. Okay. So a bile flask to recover vitality. These consecrated flasks are refilled by kneeling in a pre-deu. Find empty vessels to increase the amount you can carry. All right. Pretty standard Castlevania stuff. So each one of these people is embodying, this very Christian imagery involved with suffering and the relationship between pain and penance, basically. So famously, for example, I was raised Lutheran, and Martin Luther, it's an interesting idle animation. Martin Luther used to flagellate himself a lot. He used to go the hardest on it. And in many ways, I think that led to his questioning of Catholic principles and this idea of flagellation. Alan Watts has several speeches questioning the older or traditional Christian idea of pain being the locomotive force or the vehicle through which people can achieve some type of penance or salvation. As you could see in our item animation, we're bleeding inside this helmet, and it comes down our cheeks, giving the impression of crying tears of blood. Very striking image. Clearly the game wants us to go to the right, so we'll see if we can go to the left. See if there's any other buttons. I'm pressing left trigger now. Right trigger is a dash of sorts. A is jump. B is nothing right now. Y is nothing right now. Alright, stamina gauge. Doesn't seem like there's a stamina gauge. Alright, we're gonna full heal. Okie doke. So we cannot down slash. We can side slash, and we can up slash. The animation is very indicative of the early Castlevania games here. I think I'll use the stick for this one. I wonder if that does damage. On the down slam. Okay, L and A to drop down. Right trigger to dash under. Okay. Okay, so there is ledge grab. Okay, I guess we can destroy these shrines to the miracle, although it doesn't seem like the miracle is very friendly. Press Y to rest at the Pray Deus, saving your game and refilling your health and flasks. Upon death, you will respawn at the last visited Pray Deus. Resting will cause enemies to respawn. So, Pray Deus, I mean, this I think is Latin. Deus is God. Resting will cause enemies to respawn. Okay. Little Dark Souls-y there. Alright. Kind of a Castlevania-esque idea of breaking everything to see if there's stuff inside it. It seems to burn as it's broken, which is very Castlevania. So I played one Castlevania game in my life for Game Boy Advance, and I loved it a lot. I forgot the exact name of it. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Oh, jeez, okay. Okay. There we go. All right. Not bad. Requiem Artanum. AE, that Aertanum. It's Aether. Ooh, taking off your helmet. If there's spikes in there, that's gonna hurt a lot. Oh. Oh, you're gonna fill it with blood, of course you are. Get that big triangle hat, put it right over your face. Seems good. Yeah, so blood is famously important to Christianity, being part of the sacrament for communion. Transubstantiation was one of the major fighting points in the schism and the 30 Years' War between Protestantism and Catholicism. The difference between the actual wine transforming, spiritually and magically into the blood of Christ, or the wine being used as a symbol of the power of God. In many ways, this is a fight between a modern rationalism of religion as a series of symbols to help us be better people, or a actual experience of magic. You can kind of tell which side I'm on. But again, that's my training. That's, being raised Protestant kind of teaches you to have this relationship with symbols. And very famously in American history, many of our founding fathers famously believe in God as a clockmaker, or deism. I believe I'm remembering that correctly. So the theory of deism is that God is someone who made the world and then left, basically. That, he's set up this beautiful clock to run, and then it is our job as his creations to make it work for ourselves, and that he's no longer around actively creating miracles. That, now it is up to man to help do these things. Of course, we have a giant statue boy who comes around and starts to smash all of the thorn head guys, all of these bodies, of which presumably we're one of, kind of resurrected from the sacrifice of that lady to give us our sword. But, she said she was guilty, so, there is definitely magic in this game, in the sense that that sword transformed into from a statue into a sword. And now I think that's our sword. You need key to the chamber of the eldest brother to open this door. That's true. The eldest brother. Hey, the holy line. What's up, buddy?
Regretful be the heart, penitent one. The anguish of the eldest brother has now come to an end.
Regretful. Interesting. So there's lots of emotional language, basically negative emotional language is wrapped up in much of this commentary, and kind of, to be honest, overblown spoof of religious, emotional self-harm and harm to others. But, if you were in the 1600s and 1500s, this might not be as extreme if you really know your Christian history. And, much of the Crusades was extremely bloody. We have witch burnings all throughout Europe, during dozens of decades, and, a few centuries worth of religious violence is common in every religion, but in the West we study Christian-centric violence far more. So it's always important to remember the thing that history teaches us about religion is that it has the potential to be exceedingly violent. And it's something to keep in mind if we're, to be level-headed members of society. The anguish of the eldest brother has now come to an end. Yeah, because I killed him.
am Deo Gracias, witness to and narrator of the acts of the grievous miracle. Such is my penance, as yours is silence.
So Deo being another Latin prefix for divine. Gracias being grace, I believe. The divine grace.
The cradle of affliction is what you seek. This can be found in the mother of mothers of the churches.
So he's bound his hands and arms.
It is a remote place separated from the rest of these lands by a great sacred and forbidden door.
Okay, so bondage. Bondage and its relationship to medieval torture, medievalism in general, and the relationship to basically religious persecution is highly at play in this visual imagery. Many people find restriction and binding to be one of the ways to avoid sin. Oaths of silence or vows of silence are going to be something that we see in Morrowind in connection with their temple. And, this is meant to be a disciplinary act for yourself in order to approach some level of spiritual understanding. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, potentially, is kind of a Western corruption of another Buddhist parable or story that has been mixed and muddled over time. But yeah, so it's one of the ways to be, if you're religious minded, is, to avoid sin. You don't do sin, right? Don't do anything. In the Bible, there's, several phrases, but one of the ones that stands out to my memory right now is, if your tongue causes you to curse another, then cut it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it out. If your eyes cause you to lust and violate the precepts of the law, cut them out. It is better to be, crippled or blind, mute, deaf, and dumb rather than to violate the laws of God. So, depending on how religious you are, that, can be very true for you. Of course, that, again, encourages this idea of righteousness through self-harm.
Even a wise penitent like me knows nothing of what lies beyond those high walls. However, what I do know is that, according to the rule, one must carry out the 3 humiliations to gain access to what they guard.
So here we're seeing with a relationship between faith and ignorance, that even though you don't know something, you're still faithful to it because that's one of the key aspects of belief. In many ways, belief requires not knowing the whole story. This goes back to several ancient religious traditions, notably the stages of the tabernacle that people are allowed to be in, the difference between the holy area and the high holy area, where there's a series of restrictions that are placed on people in order to access increasingly more sacred spaces. And this idea of exclusivity, or at least information restriction, plays a large part in what religion was for Europe in the medieval time, partly by having many of their texts not be in the native languages of the regions, but rather in Latin. So, yeah, that's in some ways creates very fanatical belief systems among many of the barbarian or Celtic tribes in further west, so much so that in the Crusades time they will actually be seen as bringing the true religion of Christianity to the east, where, Christianity originally started in Jerusalem and in Palestine and in, the kingdom of Judea and Israel, who have seen it forever, and they've had it for a very long time. But somehow these, Europeans from the West are somehow more Christian than the Christians who have always been living in Jerusalem and the Middle East for their entire lives are. One of the really fun kind of backwards things that you get when you study a lot of Crusades history. And also rules. So Deuteronomy and the Book of Rules, or the Old Testament as seen as the Book of the Law in Christian religion, is split up between the New Testament and the Old Testament. So I would appreciate one of the Jewish friends that I have to explain to me their difference between that and the Torah, or all the different books of law that they have. The Talmud, I believe, is one of them that I'm not super sure about because I was not raised Jewish. So yeah, that's another thing that we can see. The difference between laws, following laws very strictly, which in many ways is kind of an artificial performance of humans. Humans don't naturally do that. But, when you really buy into this belief that there is a strict code of beliefs and ethics and rules that you absolutely have to do all the time, and when you don't do them, you need to punish yourself for them, that's in many ways the basis for Western civilization in general. Of course, that predates Christianity. It goes back to Hammurabi and Hammurabi's Code and the creation of law-based societies in the first place, which is always a struggle to get people of all power levels, but especially the higher power levels in society, to actually adhere to the law and actually participate in that social contract of people following the rules. All right, 3 humiliations. Again, we can talk about humiliation in Christianity for a very long time. The idea is you should be humble before God because he's a fundamentally different type of being than you. And also pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. Pride goeth before the fall. I tend to agree with that one a lot more. But again, the negative mirror of it is that people have no self-esteem and that people don't respect themselves or their rights or their abilities. This is, of course, countered by the idea that every person is a holy temple where, God lives and is celebrated through. So much of religious understanding and belief exists between 2 opposites, or between 2 extremes, right? And you would need to find a healthy middle balance between, but the religion gives you phrases to pull yourself in each direction if you really need it. So if you're too prideful, it gives you humiliation. If you're too humble, it gives you some aspect of pride in yourself as a creation of God and a temple of sacred being in and of yourself. And Buddhism also mirrors this. The idea is that, you should be both. Everyone is good at some stuff. Everyone is bad at some stuff. It's okay. You could just chill. You don't need to whip yourself to death, making yourself super bloody in order to in panic from it. I think that's a bit of an overreaction, as did Martin Luther, who spent his fair share doing that to himself for a long time.
One of them must be performed in the high mountains, covered in thick blankets of snow and ice.
Okay.
Another in the depths of a dark, entombed church where the sleeper lies.
Mountains are often the hardest part of Castlevania games like this. Like, the higher up you go in Dracula's castle, the harder it gets. So we might want to...
And the last one, at the end of the trail, carved by moans that claw their way out of an iron spiral. In the bowels of the bell named Hondo that grows into the earth.
Okay.
Take
Sounds
this
fun.
thorn and place it on the handle of your sword.
Yeah.
If, when the time comes, as you grip your weapon firmly, you notice that it wounds you and makes you bleed, living groan, with more thorns sprouting from it, writhing over the figure of the Father carved into the knob.
Okay, so I was going to talk about like Christian missionaries being horrified about Aztecs when they first came to the New World. Catholic missionaries, I should say, from Spain, abhorring like actual human sacrifice and blood sacrifice for in the Aztec religion, which was being actively performed, instead preferring the more, cleaned up and civilized version of their blood sacrifice, which is communion, of drinking the blood of Christ yourself and having, crucifixes being paraded all over your churches and temples. My point is that ancient religions aren't as different as people want them to believe. Christianity is a cult about a human sacrifice of Jesus. So that idea is that sacrifice in Judaism as part of an ancient culture was very used to killing doves and calves and goats and lambs, specifically lambs, as, God is Jesus is often called, the Lamb of God, which is a substitution sacrifice. So by giving a human sacrifice once, God pays for the sins of the world, right? It still involves human sacrifice. It's just that we don't do it over and over and over again. We just have one guy who was the best sacrifice that pays for all the other sacrifices. It still feeds into this idea of blood sacrifice as payment for sin, which is underlying feature of many religions. There's like animism, which is worshiping like the environment and the spirits of the world around us, and then there's kind of this like payment religion base, and many different religions have elements of many of these things in them. So even in Buddhism, you have like reincarnation, this idea of heaven and hell, being a good person so that you can get reincarnated into a good life rather than a bad life, is, one of the stronger parts of Eastern religion as well. I think it comes from Hinduism. I'm not sure about that. I'm not a religious studies major. I just know it obliquely from studying history. So, again, these core ideas in culture and society and how humans think about things in terms of payment, in terms of blood, in terms of biology, this seeking this basically balance so that the world makes sense around us, that if you do something bad happens to you, and wanting that to be very true in the world and kind of going out of their way to make it true.
That will mean that you are at the mercy of the grievous miracle, whether for its punishment or its forgiveness.
You have a quiet thorn. You can check out the items you have found so far in your inventory while playing. Press I think it's start to open it. You earn a small gift from Deogracius nailed into the effigy of the Twisted under the guard of your sword. So when you're grasping it, it hurts you if you press into it. Thorns arisen from the miracle feed on sin and guilt, growing with the burden that its bearer carries. Deogracius' farewell. Brother Abbot, you know that I have been a scribe in this abbey since I was but a wee child. I have written about our church, our saints, and our miracle of the greatest pain. I must inform you that I have made the decision to leave, although I intend to continue writing. In these walls, I cannot be a true witness of the works of the miracle. I need to appreciate with my own eyes your holy works. I will be a teller of the miracle wherever it takes me, rain or shine, or scorching sand under my bare feet. Brother Abbot. I will be a teller of the miracle. Yeah, okay. I mean, do I equip it or do I put it somewhere? Like, is the thorn for something specific? See, that's one of the things about these games is it's really hard to know what's an important secret for lore reasons and story, and like when to kind of
Even
chill
a
on it.
wise penitent like me. No, however,
Okay.
when sorrowful be the heart.
Okay, so that's the intro. I think that's going to be kind of a good taste of what I can offer just from religious history of some of the contextualizing with anyone who wasn't raised extremely Christian in their childhood might not necessarily know, or at least wouldn't have the sharper parts of what a in-depth Christian upbringing has about all of these themes. But yeah, I'm thinking about cutting it off here. It'll make it a 30-minute video, and it should be around what we're trying to hit for these, maybe an hour to 30 minutes. And all right. I will see you guys later, and peace.